They thought she was an easy target. She was quiet, small, and never stood up for herself. The bullies laughed, mocked, and humiliated her at every chance they got. But what they didn't know was the truth that would change their lives forever. The bullies laughed, mocked, and humiliated her at every chance they got. One of the bullies sneers, "What are you going to do? Cry to your mommy?" They thought they could break her, but they had no idea who she was. They didn't know the storm that was coming for them. These bullies didn't know she was a police officer's daughter, and they regretted it. Her name was Emily, a 15-year-old girl with soft brown hair and kind, gentle eyes. She was sweet, innocent, and always tried to see the good in others, even when they were cruel to her. Emily loved reading books and spent most of her free time in the school library, where she felt safe and unseen. But Emily had a secret. Her father was a police officer, one of the most respected in the town. He was brave, strong, and well known for always doing the right thing. But Emily never told anyone at school about her father's job. She didn't want people to treat her differently or think she got special treatment. Emily's school life was difficult. She was quiet and shy, which made her an easy target for bullies. Every day she faced teasing and laughter from students who thought her silence made her weak. Despite this, Emily never fought back or told anyone what she was going through. She handled herself with quiet strength, carrying the weight of their words like heavy stones. The bullies at school were relentless. There were 3 of them: Lucas, the arrogant leader who loved to show off and make others feel small; Ryan, his loyal follower who laughed at everything Lucas said; and Jessica, the cruel joker who enjoyed finding new ways to humiliate people. Lucas believed he was untouchable. He was tall, athletic, and always surrounded by other students who wanted to be his friends. Ryan followed Lucas like a shadow, always agreeing with him and doing his dirty work. Jessica, on the other hand, used her sharp tongue to cut people down. Her words were like knives, leaving invisible wounds that took forever to heal. Together, the 3 of them ruled the school hallways, picking on anyone they saw as weak. And Emily, with her quiet nature and soft demeanor, became their favorite target. They mocked her clothes, her books, and even the way she walked. Sometimes they would snatch her things, throw them on the ground, and laugh as she bent down to pick them up. But through all of this, Emily never shed a tear in front of them. She stayed silent, holding her pain inside. And while they saw her silence as weakness, they couldn't see the strength it took for her to endure their cruelty every single day. It started with small things. Emily would enter the classroom, and her chair would be missing. She'd look around, confused, only to see Lucas and Ryan grinning in the corner. They thought it was funny to watch her search for a chair while everyone else stared. She quietly picked up a chair from the back of the room and sat down, trying to ignore their laughter. Then there were the little notes, crumpled pieces of paper with hurtful words scribbled across them. Loser, weakling, crybaby. Lucas would pretend to pass the notes to his friends, but they always ended up on Emily's desk. She'd open them, her hands shaking, and quickly tuck them away, her face flushed with embarrassment. In the hallway, Jessica would walk up to her with a cruel smile. "Oh, look at her," she'd say loudly. "Where'd you get those clothes, Emily?" The thrift store? The students around them would laugh, and Emily's face would burn. She'd grip her books tightly and keep walking, pretending not to hear them. During lunch, Lucas and his gang would sit at the table closest to Emily's, whispering and laughing loudly while looking in her direction. They'd throw small pieces of food at her tray, waiting for a reaction. But Emily never gave them one. She simply ate in silence, her eyes fixed on her plate as her appetite disappeared. Then came the worst day. It was Friday, and the entire school was preparing for the annual assembly. Emily had been chosen to read a passage from a book in front of everyone, a rare moment where her voice would be heard. She had practiced for weeks and was determined to do it perfectly. Lucas and Jessica, however, had other plans. Just minutes before the assembly started, they cornered Emily outside the auditorium. Lucas snatched the book from her hands. "You think anyone cares about your stupid reading?" he sneered. Emily's heart pounded as she reached for the book, but Lucas held it high above her head, out of reach. Jessica giggled as she pulled a small water bottle from her bag. Without warning, she unscrewed the cap and poured the water all over Emily's hair and clothes. The cold liquid soaked through her shirt, and her books fell to the ground, ruined. "Oops," Jessica said mockingly. "You look better this way." Emily stood frozen, her body trembling from the cold and humiliation. Students walking past stopped to watch, some whispering, others laughing quietly. Tears filled Emily's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She knelt down, gathering her wet books as Lucas and Jessica walked away, their laughter echoing down the hall. Inside the auditorium, the principal called Emily's name, but she didn't come. She was hiding in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. Her hair dripped with water, and her clothes clung to her body. She pressed her hands against the sink, trying to steady her breathing. "Why me?" she whispered softly to herself. Her reflection blurred as tears finally streamed down her face. Outside, the assembly went on without her, but the students were already whispering. "Did you see what happened to Emily? She's such a loser. No wonder they pick on her." In that moment, Emily felt truly alone. The laughter, the whispers, the water dripping onto the tile floor. It all swirled around her, louder and louder, until it was the only thing she could hear. Emily walked home slowly after the assembly. Her clothes were still damp, and her books were ruined. She clutched them tightly, holding her head low as she passed the familiar streets. She didn't want anyone to see her tear-streaked face. When she finally reached her front door, she hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. Her father was sitting at the kitchen table reading a newspaper. He looked up when he heard the door open and froze when he saw Emily. Her hair was messy, her clothes soaked, and her face pale. "Emily," he said softly, his voice full of concern. Emily tried to avoid his eyes as she put her bag down, but her father stood up and walked over to her. "What happened?" he asked gently, placing his hands on her shoulders. That was all it took. The walls she had built around herself came crashing down. Emily's lip trembled, and the tears she had been holding back poured out. "Dad, they won't stop," she cried, her voice breaking. "They laugh at me every day, they take my things, and today they poured water all over me before the assembly." She looked at her father with red, swollen eyes. "Why me? Why are they so cruel?" Her father's expression darkened, but he kept his voice calm and steady. He pulled Emily into a hug, holding her close as she cried into his shoulder. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's not your fault," he said softly. "Some people are cruel because they think no one will stop them. But you don't have to carry this alone anymore." Emily looked up at him, confused. Her father wiped the tears from her face and gave her a reassuring smile. "I promise you, they won't get away with this. I'll take care of it." The next day, Emily's father quietly started his plan. He didn't go to the school or confront the bullies directly. Instead, he began to gather information. At work, he made a few calls to the school administration and got access to reports about recent incidents involving bullying. At home, he sat with Emily and gently asked her to tell him everything, every name, every incident. "It's okay," he said calmly. "Just tell me what happened. We'll handle this together." Meanwhile, Emily's father checked social media. Lucas, Ryan, and Jessica had been careless. They often posted pictures and videos of their pranks, thinking they were funny. It didn't take long for Emily's father to find proof of their actions. Late one evening, Emily walked into the living room to find her father sitting at his desk with his laptop open. The screen glowed in the dim room, and Emily noticed a familiar face in one of the videos. It was her. Lucas and Jessica were laughing as they poured water on her head. Emily's heart sank at the sight, but her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "This ends now," he said firmly. "They think no one sees what they're doing, but they're wrong. Tomorrow, we show them they're not untouchable." Emily felt a spark of hope for the first time. Her father was calm, collected, and determined. She didn't know exactly what he was planning, but she trusted him. That night, Emily went to bed feeling safer than she had in weeks. The words her father said echoed in her mind. They won't get away with this. The next day at school, Lucas, Ryan, and Jessica walked through the hallways as if they owned the place. Their laughter echoed loudly, and their smug smiles made it clear that they believed nothing could touch them. But something was different. Teachers and students glanced at them with strange looks, and Lucas began to feel uneasy. He nudged Ryan. "Why is everyone staring at us?" Ryan shrugged, laughing it off. "They're just jealous, bro." At lunchtime, everything changed. The principal's voice boomed through the intercom. "Lucas, Ryan, and Jessica, report to my office immediately." The cafeteria went silent. Lucas's smug smile vanished, and Ryan's face turned pale. "What did we do?" Jessica whispered nervously. Inside the principal's office, Emily's father stood beside the principal, a tablet in his hands. The bullies were called in one by one, their confidence crumbling as they entered the room. Lucas glared at the officer. "What is this about?" he demanded, trying to sound tough. Emily's father said nothing. He simply pressed play on the tablet. The video began, Lucas snatching Emily's book, Jessica pouring water on her, Ryan laughing in the background. Every word, every cruel laugh, and every humiliating moment was captured. Lucas's face turned red. Jessica gasped, covering her mouth. Ryan looked down at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The principal's voice was sharp. "Is this how you behave? You think this is funny? You humiliated another student in front of the whole school." He pointed at the screen. "This is unacceptable. Your parents are on their way, and there will be consequences." The bullies tried to defend themselves, but the evidence was undeniable. Lucas muttered, "It was just a joke. We didn't mean anything by it." Emily's father finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "A joke? Humiliating my daughter in front of the entire school, making her feel worthless, that's not a joke. That's cruelty." For the first time, Lucas, Ryan, and Jessica were speechless. They looked small, afraid, and powerless. The principal informed them that they were being suspended for their actions and that further consequences would be discussed with their parents. Later that day, word of what happened spread across the school. Students whispered about how Lucas and his gang had been caught. Videos of their actions had been taken down from social media, and for the first time, the bullies were silent. No laughter, no cruel remarks, just silence. Emily, meanwhile, walked through the hallways with her head held high. She wasn't invisible anymore. Some students smiled at her, while others looked guilty for not helping sooner. Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: confidence. That afternoon, Emily saw a younger student being picked on by another group of kids. Instead of walking away, she stepped forward. "Hey, stop it," she said firmly. The bullies turned, surprised, but Emily stood her ground. "Leave him alone." They backed off, mumbling to themselves. Emily turned to the younger boy and smiled. "Are you okay?" He nodded, his eyes wide with gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly. Emily walked away, feeling stronger than ever. She realized she didn't need to hide anymore. She wasn't weak. She wasn't alone. As she left school that day, her father waited for her outside. He smiled as she approached. "You did good today," he said, proud. Emily smiled back. "So did you, Dad." Together, they walked home. the sun shining brightly above them. Justice had been served, and Emily had found her voice. The school assembly hall was filled to the brim. Rows of students sat whispering quietly, while teachers stood along the sides, watching over the gathering. The principal stepped onto the stage, his expression serious. The room fell silent. "Today, we need to address a serious matter," the principal began. "We've recently seen behavior that goes against everything our school stands for. Bullying, humiliation, and cruelty have no place here." The spotlight shifted as Lucas, Ryan, and Jessica were called to the stage. The three bullies stood awkwardly, their eyes fixed on the floor. Murmurs spread across the crowd as students whispered among themselves. Lucas's usual confidence had completely vanished. Jessica looked pale, and Ryan fidgeted nervously. Emily and her father sat in the front row. Emily watched as the bullies stood before the entire school, a scene she never thought she'd see. Her father gave her a reassuring nod. The principal turned to Lucas, Ryan, and Jessica. "Do you have anything to say to your fellow students?" he asked firmly. Lucas hesitated, his face flushed with shame. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry." His words echoed across the silent room. He looked up briefly, his eyes meeting Emily's. "I know what we did was wrong. I'm sorry, Emily." Jessica stepped forward, her hands trembling. "I didn't realize how much it hurt you," she said softly. "I thought it was just a joke, but it wasn't. I'm really sorry." Ryan, standing beside her, nodded silently, unable to say more. The principal nodded solemnly. "You've all been suspended, and as part of your punishment, you will participate in community service to understand the consequences of your actions." The students in the assembly murmured again. Some looked surprised, others satisfied. For the first time, Lucas, Jessica, and Ryan looked vulnerable, like the weight of their actions had finally hit them. Emily sat quietly, watching the scene unfold. A part of her felt closure, a long-awaited moment of justice. Her bullies had finally realized the pain they caused, and they stood before everyone, apologizing for it. After the assembly, as students began to leave, Lucas approached Emily hesitantly. "Emily," he said quietly, "I am really sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it." Emily looked at him for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "Thank you for saying that," she said softly. She didn't smile, but there was no anger in her voice either. Lucas turned and walked away. His shoulders slumped. Emily's father stood beside her, his voice low and steady. "I'm proud of you," he said. "You didn't let them break you." Emily smiled faintly, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. Justice had been served, and though the scars were still there, she knew she was stronger than she had ever been before. Weeks passed, and life at school changed. Emily was no longer the quiet girl who walked with her head down. She moved through the hallways with confidence, her shoulders back and her head held high. Students greeted her warmly, and teachers noticed the change too. Emily's kindness, which had once been mocked, was now respected. Lucas, Ryan, and Jessica returned to school after serving their suspension and completing their community service. They were quieter, no longer the center of attention. While some students avoided them, others noticed a change. Jessica, in particular, had begun to help younger students in the library, where Emily often spent her free time. One afternoon, Emily walked into the library to find Jessica helping a younger student organize his books. Jessica looked up and smiled faintly. Emily nodded in return. It wasn't a friendship, but it was something better, understanding. Outside of school, Emily continued to grow. Her father supported her every step of the way, encouraging her to believe in herself. Emily even joined a local youth group, where she shared her story with others who had faced bullying. Her words inspired them. "You're stronger than you think, and you're never alone." The final scene shows Emily standing in front of a small crowd at the youth group. her voice strong and clear. I used to believe that being strong meant staying silent, but I learned that real strength is about standing up, for yourself and for others. Bullying is never the answer. Strength isn't about hurting others, but protecting those in need. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories like this.